All right, Ms. Limburger, here's the audience. This is the second of speeches. This will be joys and dangers of being on the autism spectrum. Let's begin. Right. Vaccines, bad parenting, breast formula, or baby formula. What do all of these have in common? If you believe all the riffraff on the internet, that they'll give your babies autism, 100%. If you made the mistake of beating your kid a single time, if you did the unspeakable of giving your kid a single vaccine, or God forbid you didn't breastfeed, you like an insane person, then your baby's going to get autism. It's too bad that all of that is wrong. Other misconceptions concerning autism are that we can't be self-sufficient, or that we lack the ability to connect with others. Well, that's not necessarily true. While it is true that we, on the autism spectrum, have some significantly bigger problems than others, workplace discrimination and abuse being a couple of them, it also gives us a couple of advantages, like some unique skills, and that it doesn't keep us from being successful. All right, here's a little thought experiment. Let's say you're a manager looking to hire some new workers. An applicant comes in, and everything's great about him until he tells you he has autism. What is the first thing your mind thinks of when you hear that? Now, that's going to vary from person to person, because not everyone thinks the same way. But it should illustrate an interesting point, particularly if you immediately jumped to a stereotype, is that misconceptions about autism are very prevalent. So much so, that some studies even show that autistic people, even among other disabled groups, have the highest rates of unemployment. Now, part of that will do with the inability to be self-sufficient for some of them, but for most, autistic people simply can't get jobs, whether that's because as the managers see that they don't function properly in a normal workplace, or because misconceptions make them less likely to hire. It doesn't really matter what it is, but it's there. Page 312 of the Journal of Family Medicine by Margaret Savall reads, although many people and some physicians think that children with ASD are intellectually disabled, in fact, less than 1 in 5 people, 19% of them in fact, have one. Just goes to show that being autistic doesn't necessarily make you unable to be your own person. But that leads into another problem that autistics often face: hypersensitivity. A lot of times, autistics will enter abusive or even traumatic situations, and their pleas fall on deaf ears because it's not traumatic for a normal person. Like, to some autistic people, just the sound of a baby crying is enough to cause physical pain that a normal person simply would not be able to understand. In addition, because autistics have a very hard time communicating their needs, it can make autistics seem pliable and passive, which can open the doorway to abusive relationships, be it romantic or workplace. They're just simply trying to live life normally, Unfortunately, normal life is really difficult for an autistic person to almost mimic in a way. With that said, however, there are a few places that autistics do have advantages. For instance, being autistic doesn't mean you can't be successful. One thing, there's like a list of people that are either confirmed to have autism or at least speculated to have it. Take Tim Burton, for example, whose assistant mentions that several times he has shown what I call locking himself in the writing dungeon for multiple hours without human interaction. And Dan Aykroyd has openly admitted that he has autism. As mentioned in Montgomery Academy's Dan Aykroyd battling both Asperger's and Tourette's. I was diagnosed with Tourette's at 12. I had physical tics, made grunting noises, and it affected my ability to be outgoing. I had therapy, which really helped, and by 14, my symptoms eased. I also have Asperger's, but it's something I can manage. He has explicitly stated that he carries a police badge with him, and his interest in ghosts is probably why he's been a writer in every single Ghostbusters movie except the 2021 version. And as for some of those abilities I mentioned earlier, autistics tend to face a situation where the thing that plagues their very existence one minute could be a great asset the next. From strengths and abilities from Altogether Autism, autistic people can display a range of abilities and skills that can be directly related to their diagnosis. They can include being highly punctual, able to concentrate for long periods of time when motivated. They have a narrow range of interest that really interests them and can hold their attention for long periods of time. And they're capable of memorizing and learning information fairly quickly. In addition, autistic people are normal people, in a lot of ways, they're like everyone else. They just perceive the world differently. In a few minutes, that people tend to make assumptions about autistic people, whether that be as a result of workplace discrimination or ignoring abusive stuff because it's not really abusive to a normal person. And people like that tend to overlook that autistic people can have a wide variety of special attributes to them, a unique worldview, a narrow range of interests that they tend to become great experts on. So maybe next time you hear someone say that they're autistic, maybe don't just jump to conclusions. Instead, try to understand them and try to meet them on their own wavelength as best you can.